Today we're taking a look at another Microsoft Teams room system, this one from Logitech. Right behind me, we've got the Logitech Tap, the Logitech Meetup, and an NUC from Intel. We'll be putting together this room system, looking at how to wire it all up, looking at the specs and the capabilities, and then doing a demo of joining a Microsoft Teams meeting with that one tap, and then actually sharing the desktop out via HDMI. Let's check it out. Before we get our hands dirty with the Logitech Meetup and the Logitech Tap and connect all of the components for our Microsoft Teams room system, let's take a look at the NUC from Intel that will actually be used to connect all these components. Before we look at the device, let's look at a few specs right here on the box. We can see that we are running an 8th gen quad-core i5 processor. We've got HDMI capabilities that support 4K ultra-high def viewing, support for both 2.5-inch drives and M.2 SSDs. We've got 4 3.0 USB Gen 2 ports. One of them is a charging port, and then Bluetooth capability as well. Finally, a micro SD card slot. Picking up the device itself, looking at the front of the device, I presume this is the front. We've got some of these USB spots up here. Again, I think this would be our charging port right there. You've got a jack for headphones, and then we've got the power button to turn it on once everything is plugged in. Turning it to the side, got a vent, keep things cool when it's running hot. On the back, we've got our 19-volt plug for power. We've got the HDMI. This is where our display for the Microsoft Teams room system will be plugged into. Then we've got the LAN port for internet access. And finally, 2 other USB ports here as well. We'll be plugging in the Logitech Meetup to the top and the Logitech Tap to the bottom. USB-C port there. And then we've got a Kensington lock slot right here, and there's that micro SD card slot as well. And at the bottom, taking a quick look there, we can see we've got these kind of softer rubber grips to prevent the NUC from sliding around too much. The NUC also comes with a mounting plate so that we can keep this even more stationary, help prevent it from walking out of the room or sliding around too much. Finally, the NUC needs power. As we saw, there is a 19-volt connection in the back. This power cable comes included in the box as well. Let's move on to the Logitech equipment. All right, taking a look at our Logitech Meetup, we want to be able to plug this thing in to give it power, right? So we've got our cable here that is intended for that. We've got the appropriate component that has the prongs we need to plug this device into a US outlet. There are a number of other pieces for other countries and other outlet types that are come with the box. So wherever you might be ordering this from, really good chance you're gonna be able to plug it into your local outlet. You just slide it right into place, click, it locks in place. You hold this little piece down in the middle to slide it back out if you need to. Or we just keep that in because we need it like this. The other end, simple power cable. We'll plug that in a moment. And then our USB cable, pretty simple. This end, where is gonna go in our room system or our laptop. And our USB-C end is going to go into the Meetup itself. Let's flip that Meetup around. Now, as we're flipping it around, one thing I'll point out here, you'll notice the stand that the Meetup is on. This is a pretty flexible stand. Lets you get the device sitting at the right angle, whether it's mounted to a wall and sitting in a different angle, or sitting on a desktop like I just had it, tilting up or looking straight. You get some flexibility there. The other thing we'll notice, got a little bit of clean that up. All right, we've got our power right here. Focus, there we go. USB-C, and then an audio input option as well, which we're not going to mess with in this video. So we take our power cable, plug it in like so. We take our USB-C, plug it in like so, and now we are ready to plug this into the power outlet. Sitting on the table, we have the entire contents of the box that the Logitech Tap comes in. With the exception of the numerous amount of plug adapters, both the Logitech Tap and the Logitech Meetup, which we'll be including in our overall Microsoft Teams room setup, come with various adapters that can be attached to the power cable so that you can plug in these devices in rooms across the globe, apparently. So I have pre-selected the plug that we need here, the prongs for the United States. We'll set that aside. The rest of the items, there's the power adapter itself. Then we've got the USB cable back there. It is one of those strong cables, right? So it's a little more rigid. Definitely can withstand some unintended tugging or overzealous stretching of the cables, if you will. We've got the Logitech Tap itself right here. That is our 10.1 inch screen that sits in the center of your room on the conference table. Kind of that place where you do the one-touch tap to join your Microsoft Teams meetings. And then we've got the cloth at the very back. Let's pull this up here. Handy little thing, actually. You know, it's got the logo on here for Logitech, and you can clean your screen with it, like so, etc. But the other thing that this is really handy for is actually getting into the Logitech Tap so you can connect all the wiring. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. Okay, let's get a good overview of this tap and figure out where to plug in all the cords and how this thing actually gets set up. Taking a close look at the front, you'll see there is this sensor to detect motion. That way it will know if there is someone that has entered the room and is moved in front of this center of room display itself. As we spin it around, you see that this thing has an angle to face up toward the person viewing it. We look at the back. Okay, we've got our Kensington lock slot there. We'll take a closer look at that later. And then we look at the bottom, and we see we've got still nowhere where plugs go. So how do we get to those plugs? Actually, there is this piece really just slides right on in. You just kind of get your fingers and nails in there and gently pry it on out. These two circular post pieces go right into these holes right here. And each of the cords that plug into this device come out right here. So how do we get into the device to plug those in? Great question, thanks for asking. We're gonna flip this thing over and set it right on that handy cloth that was included with the device. And these simply unscrew. Now they don't come all the way out. You'll feel once they get loose enough to pull the bottom of the device off. But they are what keeps all the cords protected here. It's ready to be pulled off. It just comes right up like this. You can see these little lips, they tuck in here when you're ready to close it. But we pull that off, and now we have the inside of the device exposed. We've got a place for our power. We've got our USB-C port. We've got the HDMI port and a USB-A port over here for any other types of accessories or peripherals that you want to plug in. A couple of these thicker, larger, stronger cables wrap around these kind of half circle shapes right here to help guide them into the proper slots up top. And these are kind of a rubbery feel to them. They grip and hold the cords in place. And once they're all in place, we simply reapply the panel and screw it back down into place. Now, if you don't want the cords to go out the back, let's say you want the cords to go under the table. So you want this device to sit on the table and have the cords go under the table. There are no cords visible whatsoever. The bottom panel also pops right out so that you can have the cords routed out the bottom and through a hole in the table that has been either pre-exists or has been drilled into place. And that little circle just pops right back in nice and sturdy if we want to keep that there. Let's set this to the side and go ahead and get things wired up. Now, as I was going over the contents of the box earlier, I failed to get the HDMI cable out. My bad, an HDMI cable is included. We'll go ahead and take this thing off. And the HDMI cable allows us to walk into the room and plug our laptop directly into the tap for desktop sharing purposes in the Microsoft Teams meeting, right? So we unfold this. Now the HDMI cable is the thickest of the cables that come with the Tap. And if you look very carefully, you'll notice that this center slot right here is actually the widest. It's a little wider than the others, and it really fits the HDMI cable. So we will first take our HDMI cable, we will plug it in right there. There we go. And we wrap this around like so. And then put it right through that center slot. There we go. It is now in place. Next up, we've got our strong strong USB cable. The USB-C end will plug into the Tap, the other end plugging into the NUC itself, the brains of the room system, if you will. So we take off our cable straps, and we'll set this cabling right back here. Take our USB-C, plug it in there. Again, we'll wrap this around, and we will put it right through those slots. There we go. We've got our HDMI and USB-C cable. Next up, we've got power. Now, I have not attached the attachment here. Let's go ahead and slide that in place. There we go. Ready to plug that in. And we'll remove this little zip tie. Okay, setting this off to the side. You can see the power plugs in right here. Got that plugged in. Now we can run this around if we want to. It's a lot more loose and nimble of a cable. We'll bring it right out the back. And at this time, I've got no accessories or other devices that we're going to plug in here. The Logitech Meetup will plug into the NUC. So we are good to go. We can now return the back cover to the Logitech Tap. Put those slots in there. Hold it on down. It's kind of being pushed up by the cables. Line up the screws and screw it down into place so that our bottom is nice and flush again. And if we flip this around, we can now see that we've got our cables coming out of each of those spots just as we want them to. We have now moved the Tap over to the table here. We're setting up a room system as a whole. We've got our Logitech Meetup sitting right here with its remote control. We've got the NUC, which is the computing piece of the room system, sitting off to the right. And then we've got a monitor, a 32-inch Dell monitor sitting at the back of the whole setup. Now, looking at the Tap again, if you'll recall, we put the HDMI cable into the back. We've got that right here. This doesn't really go anywhere until we're ready to share our desktop. This is a cable that would just sit on the conference table, waiting for you to walk into the room and plug your laptop into it. So we'll set that off to the side. The other cable is, of course, going to be the power cable, and then we have our strong USB. The strong USB cable is going to come all the way around to the NUC. We've carried the USB-A cable around to the other side of the table. We'll go ahead and plug this into the NUC. Zooming into the NUC here, we see that we've got the NUC itself, which again is the computing brain of the Microsoft Teams room system. We've got the power plugged in. We've got our LAN plugged in right here. We've got the Logitech Meetup, which is the camera and soundbar, plugged into the USB slot up top. And then right below that, we've taken that strong USB cable from the Tap itself and plugged it into the USB slot underneath. Looking at the front of the device, there is a power button right here. That gets us powered on. We can now see that our system is waking up. The Logitech Meetup has the camera going through the paces, waking up, looking around the room, all that good stuff. The Tap itself is powering on here as well. We can see our little Logitech logo is lit up at the bottom. Screen's coming on. There we go. When the Tap first fires up, we need to walk through actually getting it set up. We go ahead and click to agree to the terms of the software license agreement. Then we got to enter our account information for the Microsoft Teams room that we have created via PowerShell. Now that we've got the username and password enter in, as you can see, I got a little creative there, tap@getscsjosh.com. We want to click on our supported meeting mode. It's set to Skype for Business only. We want this to be Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams as the default. So we can do both types of meetings, but Microsoft Teams is the default. And then we've got Bluetooth beaconing. Do we want to enable that? That is turned on. We want to be able to find nearby rooms from our devices when we are starting a Microsoft Teams meeting and use this room if it's available in the schedule. We got our other settings in here, the configure domain, the automatic password rotation. We're not going to mess with those. So we go ahead, we'll set this down. We'll click next here. Take a look at some other settings. Auto screen sharing. So this allows us to automatically share the screen of a device once we plug it in with HDMI. We have that turned on and we'll leave it on. We've got the microphone for conferencing. It knows that we have the Meetup plugged in right now, and we want to keep the Meetup for our current speaker and microphone. Our speaker for conferencing, the default speaker is going to be the Logitech Tap audio. And then we've got hide meeting names. We're gonna go ahead and keep that off, and dual monitor mode, so we can display across both monitors if we want to. Content camera preview. Right now, we've only got the Logitech Meetup in there. We are going to plug in the Logitech Brio in an upcoming demo and show off the content camera capabilities. That is where you kind of turn into a ghost when you're working on a whiteboard and you can see what's on the whiteboard through you as you walk in front of the camera. Sending logs, all that good stuff. Let's go ahead and click next here. Next up, do we want to choose a different theme? Let's just keep the default theme here, and congratulations, let's finish. We scroll back out, we can see that after signing in and getting the device set up, once again, the Logitech Meetup is going through the paces, camera's waking up, and our Microsoft Teams room system is getting ready to fire up. And there you have it. We are signed in, or we are signing in, as we can see up top. The familiar screen that we expect to see in a Microsoft Teams room system. Once we're signed in, we'll have the ability to click on New Meeting. There we go, we're signed in. We've got our dial pad. Dial pad is gone, and the reason for that is this account is not set up for enterprise voice capabilities. So we don't have the ability to dial out. We can start a new meeting, we can present, and if we click on more, you can see we've got our invite this room, accessibility, restart device, and these settings. We'll go ahead and get out of there. Okay, let's go ahead and demonstrate a Microsoft Teams meeting and sharing our desktop with the Logitech Tap. So here you see we have the Tap test meeting on the main part of the screen there. We'll go ahead and say join. And I want to point out that we're going to join the Tap test meeting with a simple tap. Yeah, we probably should have had some sort of little drum somewhere in there. Yeah, anyway. There's the tap, and boom, we are joining the meeting. Now, there's nobody else joining the meeting at this time. We see that we do have the regular meeting options at the bottom. You've got the mute option, you've got the camera option, and then we've got our volume up and down, and a keypad if we had dial-out capabilities in our meeting. So there we go, we're in the meeting now. We talked about having the HDMI cable that is plugged into the Tap for sharing our desktop. So if we walk into a room and we simply want to plug in our laptop to the HDMI cable, the settings that we chose when setting up our Tap say that the screen will automatically share. So I'm going to plug in my laptop with this HDMI cable now. And as soon as I do, the desktop should share right into the meeting. And there we go. We are sharing the desktop right into the meeting using our Logitech Tap, Microsoft Teams meetings, and the whole setup right before us as the Microsoft Teams room system.